Guys, I'm so delighted to record today's podcast. We've got Marcus Hutchins here with us today. Marcus has been a great friend and supporter of the Hacking Game since the beginning, really. But I'm really excited because this week Marcus officially joined the Hacking Games Advisory Board. He's been a great partner and friend from the beginning, but now he's very much absolutely inside the company and part of our mission to create a generation of ethical hackers to make the world safer. Marcus's story is really the reason why we're on this mission. So Marcus is world renowned for his role in the WannaCry virus. In 2017, a global healthcare virus reported to be designed by the North Koreans attacked hospital systems and healthcare systems in 25 countries around the world. And the UK was one of the first countries to go down. While the world panicked, while people couldn't get medical services, there was a 22-year-old kid on the west coast of the UK who was off the grid, had fallen out of the school system, had found his world in the online hacking communities. And it was Marcus who found the kill switch. Marcus became world-renowned for his role in stopping the WannaCry virus. So much so that Wired magazine put him on the front cover as the hacker who saved the internet. He was flown around the world to hacking conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON to tell his great story. And it was at one of those conferences, at DEF CON in Vegas, when he got pulled by the FBI. And maybe he thought they were going to ask him how he found the kill switch for the WannaCry virus. But in fact, they identified that he had been part of a malware that had been created. That had been used for serious financial crime. Fast forward, Marcus found himself in court. He had raised funding from the hacking community to defend his case, but he got a long-term jail sentence, 10 years, I believe, but we'll confirm with Marcus. But the judge on the day was one of the most enlightened judges. And he ruled a red line through it and said, because this is the hacker who saved the internet, we want to make a show of how people can go from doing bad things when they were kids to doing good things for society. This really is the redemption story of young hackers who maybe were caught up doing the wrong things, but then found their virtuous path to doing the right things. Marcus is an inspiration for kids around the world, for what our mission is as the Hacking Games. And it's why I'm so delighted that not only is he here with us today, but he's now part of the Hacking Games. Marcus, welcome. Thanks so much for joining.
I'm so glad to be here and so glad to be a part of the Hacking Games now. Finally. It's been a long time coming.
No, it's awesome. It really, really is. So Marcus, I know it is a story well told, but there'll be lots of our listeners who haven't really heard the full WannaCry story. So do you mind taking us through that from your perspective as a kind of a young hacker? Take us from day zero and what happened when you found out about WannaCry and then what happened to you after that?
Okay, yes. So WannaCry, I think, happened May 12th. I was on holiday at the time, so I'm not working, and I start seeing these news articles popping up. It's saying it's hitting NHS surgeries here and there and there. And back then with ransomware, it was usually via like phishing emails. Someone would have to like download a malicious document, click a link. So it would be very unusual to see ransomware hitting multiple like branches or divisions of the same organization at the same time. So I was like naturally quite suspicious. I'm like, why is this ransomware hitting so many places all at once? That's not something that happens with phishing and malicious emails. So I asked my friend, I'm like, can I get a sample? Can I have a look at this? And I realized that what I was looking at is the first ransomware that could spread computer to computer completely unaided.
Wow.
And that was like a huge leap in the technology, because now there is no need to trick anyone into clicking a link or opening a malicious document or running an executable. All the computer has to do is be turned on, and it can just hack the computer completely unattended. So I'm like, this is a big deal. Like, this is one of the most serious cyber attacks that I can remember, like in my entire career. So I start pulling it apart, and I notice there's this unregistered domain, and I'm like, oh, cool. Because my job back then was we would find ways to monitor malware. And one of the common ways you would do that is they would use something called domain generation algorithms. And what that basically is it would generate random web addresses according to a predetermined algorithm, which meant that if the web address they were using was taken down, they could just go and register a new one tomorrow, and it would generate a new list of domains every single day. So we were pretty used to seeing unregistered domains in malware, because they wouldn't register every single domain in the algorithm. They'd just grab one or two, enough to keep control of the botnet. So I just saw this domain, unregistered in malware. Natural instinct was to just go and register it. And I just start seeing like hundreds of thousands of unique IP addresses checking into this system. And I'm like, wow, like this thing is huge. Because when you're talking hundreds of thousands of IP addresses, if those are networks, you could have like 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 computers behind a single IP address. So these are like entire corporate networks getting ransomware. So I'm seeing all of these things checking in. And sort of later on, we started to realize that the purpose of the domain was it actually deactivates the malware. If it's successfully able to reach out to this domain and it gets a successful HTTP response, it just stops. It stops spreading. It doesn't encrypt the computers.
The kill switch.
The kill switch. So I activate the kill switch, and I realize several hours later that I've just stopped probably the biggest ransomware attack in the history of the world. And I'm like, I don't even know how to process that.
But paint the picture for me. Where are you? Are you in your bedroom? Are you like, what's happening?
Well, so it's very cliche. I was at the time technically not a basement,
yeah,
but my house was multi-level, so the front is a bit higher than the back.
Yeah.
So my bedroom was essentially in the basement.
Great. So you were the hacker, hoodied hacker in the basement.
Exactly.
What a cliche.
And when I told the media, they thought I was making it up. That is just too cliche.
And you were 22, right?
Yes.
And did you sense the enormity of what you had just done? Did you have any idea of the follow-up to that?
So it never really clicked. Like at the time, we weren't sure how many systems WannaCry had actually impacted or how many, because we could only see unique IP addresses. So we don't know if this IP address is one system, 10 systems, 100,000 systems. So it wasn't until years later that we actually got a realistic count of like how many systems this could have impacted.
Wow.
And it was above like 10 million, like it was in the tens of millions.
Wow.
But that was many, many years later. So at the time, I was like, yeah, I've stopped this ransomware. Like this is a significant piece of ransomware. This is the first time there's ever been a wormable ransomware that can move computer to computer unaided. But the actual pure gravity of WannaCry never kicked in.
So the human side of it is that people couldn't be processed in hospitals. People couldn't have their meds. People, if you had an operation, they had to cancel them. The human impact of WannaCry was really significant, right? £95 million it was predicted to cost the UK NHS.
Yeah, it was a super significant impact. We saw as you said, the NHS surgeries being cancelled. And luckily it was very early in the morning US time. I believe it would have been about somewhere around between midday and 3 p.m. UK time. So for most of the US, people weren't even awake yet.
Right,
they hadn't turned on their computer systems, which meant they were saved, and we wouldn't have had any idea what the damage would have been had it been a little later in the day when businesses were up, their computer systems were turned on, and had it hit the entire US sector. Because by the time we'd activated the kill switch, it was very early morning in the US.
Sure. So then tell me what happened after then. Did you think the world would go quiet? You've done your job, you felt good, and then you could move on to your next thing?
Well, yeah, so I thought my life would just go back to normal. Obviously, we already know that wasn't the case, but people kept telling me, make the most of your 5 minutes of fame, make the most of it. You're going to be famous for 5 minutes and that'll be it. And it just kept coming and coming and coming.
And what was that, journalists hammering on your door? Was it like a Notting Hill moment? You opened the door and there were just all these journalists outside?
There was journalists. They found my house somehow, and they just kept turning up at the door. And I thought, okay, it'll blow over in a week. It's not going to be 5 minutes, but sure, a week, a month. And it just kept going and it kept going. And I would go to conferences and I'd get recognized. And it just sort of never went back to normal. I just went from this introverted kid who doesn't like any attention to suddenly everyone wants to talk to me. So I think I did maybe 2 or 3 conferences I think it was 2 months after WannaCry. And then I fly to DEF CON. And DEF CON, I attended DEF CON.
Is that your first one?
No, that was my second DEF CON. So I attend DEF CON, I have a great week in Vegas, but little to my knowledge, the FBI had decided they weren't going to let me leave the country. So very thankful that they let me enjoy DEF CON and they didn't grab me the second I landed.
They're probably terrified.
Yeah.
Find the Fed.
Yeah, but so they let me enjoy Vegas. I had a great time. But then on the way out, as I was leaving to return home, right before I boarded my flight, they came and grabbed me.
Wow. What did you feel? What did you think they were asking? Did they want to find out how clever you were at solving the WannaCry virus? Were you still riding that train?
No, so I was going through every illegal thing I'd ever done in my head, trying to think of which specific one.
How good was that week in Vegas? Yeah.
It was. I mean, there was things in Vegas,
Yeah.
but I was just going through the list of like all of the crimes I'd committed, thinking which specific thing are they interested in, and they played it very clever. They made it seem like they were primarily interested in WannaCry, and they wanted to know about like me stopping WannaCry, and then like about an hour into the interrogation, they suddenly pivot to this malware that I wrote, and that was the point where I was like, oh, I see what this is really about. Like,
And you were aware that you had written that malware?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had suspected it would come back to bite me.
Take us down that rabbit hole a little bit on the malware. How old were you when you wrote it? What was the circumstances?
So I started hacking like very, very early teens, around like 12, 13 years old. And it kind of sort of, you went down the slope, things got bigger and bigger and bigger. I started out writing like very inconsequential malware, and I started realizing I could make money. So I started selling, basically contracting, ghostwriting code for other organizations. So a malware organization might reach out to me and they'd be like, hey, we need this piece of code.
And what age were you then?
I would have been around 14, 15.
14, 15.
Yeah.
So 14, 15, you were monetizing your skills,
Yes.
writing malware for quotes organizations.
Yes. So I was basically a ghostwriter for malware. So these organizations were contracting me, and I did that for, I want to say, until about my 20s or maybe 21.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I was comfortable.
What do you mean worse and worse and worse?
So I was comfortable with writing certain kinds of malware, like stuff that wasn't like explicitly harmful. Stuff like, we're just going to use your computer to mine Bitcoin. We're just going to click some ads in the background, stuff that's not harmful to the user. And one day I got asked to write a rootkit, and a rootkit, the purpose of that code is to hide the presence of some malware on the system. So it's very common for, say, a crypto miner, because you don't want the user to find out that their system is being used to mine crypto. So I wrote this rootkit that was designed to hide basically any malware. And little to my knowledge, the person I wrote it for had basically made a guarantee that it would not be used for any of the kinds of malware that I was morally opposed to.
Sure.
I was morally opposed to anything finance related, like stealing money, like wire fraud, anything like that. And he had promised me that it would not be used for that. And then when I hand over the finished product, he tells me that he'd actually contracted another programmer to write banking malware.
Okay.
And banking malware is designed to steal money from banks and people's bank accounts, which is the last thing I want to be involved in writing. So that was kind of the point where I realized at some point the FBI is going to turn up at my door. It might not be today. It might not be
Because you knew that he was going to use the code, the malware that you had written from nefarious use.
Yes.
Okay.
So I knew that at some point down the line, the FBI was going to turn up. I just didn't know when.
Okay.
And I had thought it would be my first year in Vegas. When I went out to DEF CON for that first time in 2016, I went into the airport expecting to be arrested.
Okay.
Because there's no point just hiding from there for the rest of your life. I was like, just get it over with. And I went in, enjoyed DEF CON, went out, no problems. So I was like, okay, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm paranoid. Next year, of course, I go in, I never come home.
And what was the moment when you saw your malware being used for nefarious use?
Pretty much immediately, because as soon as it was released, there were like news articles, and I was like, I could immediately identify that it was my code. So I'm seeing all these news articles about this new piece of banking malware that uses this very specific technique, and the technique was one that I had designed. So just from the technique alone, I could identify, oh, this is my code.
And do you get a sense of the size of fraud or theft that it was being used for?
So I don't actually think it was super widespread. Like I think, to my knowledge, we only sold it to about 20 people max.
Right.
It wasn't something like Zeus where it's being sold to like hundreds of thousands of criminals.
Yeah.
So it wasn't super successful, but it was successful enough that it caused real harm, and it also ended up on the FBI's radar.
Yeah. So the FBI hook you. You're going through your own list in your head of what they're going to get you for. What happened? So how did they land it on you?
What do you mean?
So how did they take you to the malware? Like when you understood that they found one of the things that you've done, and then what was the journey after that?
Like the legal process?
Yeah, like, were you arrested on the spot? Were you then in containment? How long did it take to go through the court process?
Yeah, so they pulled me aside in the airport. I think they spent maybe 3 hours interrogating me. They dropped me off at the I don't know what they're called, but those jails where they just throw people overnight
Right.
for like being too drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in basically the drunk tank overnight. Then they pick me up the next day. They take me to processing. I'm handed over to the U.S. Marshal Service. They take me to like an actual like detention center. It's like in the middle of the desert, like layers and layers and layers of barbed wire fences.
Wow.
Like not even like a minimum security prison, like a serious prison. And I'm like, whole time I'm thinking like, I don't even know how I get out of this at this point. Like,
Were you fearful, or were you?
I wasn't. I was more just like confused. Because it's a very strange feeling to get arrested in a country where you have committed no crimes.
Right.
Like, because cyber is international, so you are committing crimes in every country. But it's not like I've lived in the US at any point. I've committed any crimes directly while in the territory of the US.
Yeah.
I've been there.
So why here?
Yeah.
You know? Were you angry?
I was not angry. I was more confused.
Confused. Okay.
Because I did not know that was a thing you could do.
But you did know you were a criminal.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. You were self-aware to know that.
Well, I knew I had committed a crime. I just did not know that in international law you could be arrested by a country for an act that was not committed in that country.
Yeah.
So I was very confused in that I've just been picked up in a foreign country. I don't know anyone here. I have no lawyer. I don't even have the legal right to be here. Like, I'm on a visa waiver.
Yeah.
And they're like saying, okay, you have to now stay in the US. You have to go through the court system. And I think I spent maybe about 2-3 years just going through all the pretrial motions.
2 to 3 years. So were you in penitentiary for 2 to 3 years?
No, so I got out quite early.
Okay.
It's actually quite an interesting story because typically when you are either extradited or a foreign national who gets arrested in another country, they basically when you'll get a bail hearing almost immediately. And there's 2 reasons you can be denied bail. The first is that they believe you pose a danger to the community. So if you were arrested for murder, they'd be like, we don't want to take the risk that this guy's actually a murderer and keeps killing people.
Right.
And the more common one is you're a flight risk. You might flee the country to avoid charges. And as a foreign national with a foreign passport who lives in another country, who works in another country, who has 0 ties to the US, I have literally no reason to be there.
Yeah.
So I was thinking they were going to deny my bail because they're going to think I'm just going to hop on a plane, go back home.
Yeah.
UK doesn't really extradite hackers,
Yeah.
and I'd just be fine. I actually had no intention of doing that. I was going to just stay and face the charges. But they basically tried to get my bail denied because partially they were trying to argue as a flight risk, but they actually went very heavy into the danger to the community argument, which was a strange one because I'm a very calm, non-violent person.
Yeah.
And the argument actually ended up going with was I went to Battlefield Vegas, which is this shooting.
Yeah, I've been.
Yeah. So
they use that as an example.
Well, so a very niche part of US law, a lot of people don't know, is that the Second Amendment does not apply to non-permanent residents. So as a tourist, you are technically in unlawful possession of a firearm. But that law doesn't really matter because it requires that you know that, and most people don't. And these shooting ranges, they advertise to tourists. So I'm at the shooting range, I'm firing AK-47s, like fully automatic weapons, and they show these photos to the judge, and they're like, he's a danger to the community.
Oh my God.
And the photo they picked was I paid like $1,000 to fire the minigun.
Right.
So they have a photo of me with a literal minigun, and they're like, this is why he is a danger.
Look at this lethal hacker, you know, okay.
And the judge you could just see the contempt in her eyes. She was like, this is the dumbest argument I've ever heard. So she grants my bail, but the problem is typically you have to have a fixed address to be granted bail. So I end up in like a halfway house for 2-3 weeks. And eventually someone was able to convince the judge that an Airbnb counts as a fixed address for purposes of bail.
Yeah.
So I was put on house arrest without having a fixed address. I was house arrested to, at first a hotel room and then an Airbnb, which was a very strange experience.
Super strange. But it sounds like, Marcus, that you had support around you. You know, one side of this story is that there's this kind of somewhat naive kid who's turned up in America and has been hooked by the FBI, and you're suddenly alone. But the other side is, over the time, people came around you, didn't they? The community gathered around you. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so once like news of my arrest sort of got out to the media and to social media, a lot of people started rallying around me. They started raising money. They started actually someone actually who I'd never met before turned up and they posted my bail.
Wow.
And this was a cash bail, $30,000 in cash.
Wow.
And this person did not know me. They'd never met me before. And they just showed up and they posted my cash bail as this lovely couple, Tara Wheeler and Devon Olam. And I was just bailed out by someone I'd never met.
Amazing.
And then people donated to my legal fund. So I went from just being alone in this foreign country to suddenly I have like a lot of people, this sort of support network helping me.
What kind of like personal growth did you go through in all of that? I mean, what you've talked about is a kind of unbelievably intense experience at a young age out of the blue. Like if you look back at the kid who, you know, cracked the WannaCry virus to then the person you became over that, what changed for you? Like, what did you go through?
I think a lot of things changed really. Like, I was always like quite anxious and I was worried about like almost everything. And then when you actually get to like some of the worst things you can worry about, like being arrested by the FBI, and you realize, you know, it's actually not as bad as you think it is.
But that is not a signal to people to go and get arrested by the FBI.
It will ruin your life, but it's not as traumatic as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And after that, I started just seeing the world a lot more differently. I was like a lot more open to new experiences because like I could just always be like, at the end of the day, is it going to be worse than being in jail in a foreign country where you do not live?
Yeah.
And the answer is usually no. So I started I learned a lot about the justice system. I learned a lot about like, I already knew like a lot about what causes people to sort of get into this sort of line of crime. But I learned a lot about the other side and their motivations. And it just sort of, I feel like it filled in a lot of the gaps for me. Like I fully kind of understood the whole picture.
And of course, there's lots of kind of documentary content about your WannaCry experience, and we can put the links in the show and people can see it. But there is that moment where you're in court, and I've heard you say it, and you and I have talked about it, but you generally thought you were going to go to jail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you thought this is it, and, you know, to talk us about the day in the court, talk us about the ruling. What was your perspective of that? Because it was quite a shock.
Yeah, so basically once you get picked up by the FBI, like they already have you dead to rights. Like you can go to court and you can try and fight it, but most likely they have you dead to rights. So I knew that they most likely were going to get a conviction. And just based on the severity of the crime and the duration and the amount of money involved, I was pretty certain I was going to jail. And they'd also asked me to throw a couple of my friends under the bus.
Right.
Because one of the standard deals you will get if you get arrested by the FBI is they will say, give us this person. They might give you a name, or they might just say, tell us what you know. And they'll basically try and flip you to become an informant. And in return, they'll give you either lesser charges or they might drop the case entirely.
Plea bargain, basically.
Yeah. So I got my plea bargain deal and they were like, we want you to throw one of your friends under the bus. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And after that, they just pressed and they pressed and they pressed. I believe they added 4 more felony charges to my existing 6. Right. So I'm at 10 felony charges, 2 of which are aggravated felonies, right? Which they added specifically because they knew it would annoy me.
Yeah.
So they just keep ramping up the pressure and ramping up the pressure and ramping up the pressure. And because I never gave them what they wanted, they just went all out asking for the maximum possible jail time. In fact, there's a sentencing, you have like in the US, you have sentencing guidelines based on the severity of the crime that actually give you a certain range. And in some states or some jurisdictions, you have to be sentenced within that range. Yeah. So they kept trying to come up with creative ways to like move the range upwards. Because my range, it was supposed to be 2 to 4 years.
They're playing leverage. I mean, they're trying to put the squeeze on you in order for you to give up some more.
Well, at this point, we were past that. Okay. Like, they weren't even trying to get me to change my mind. They were like, you have like not given us what we wanted. Like we are going to now put the screws to you.
We're going to punish you.
So they actually kept arguing. They kept coming up with all these creative ways to inflate the financial losses, because the financial losses, they contribute to the sentencing guidelines. So they're trying to like claim like hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in like financial damage in order to push the sentencing guideline up into I think they were trying to get 8 to 16 years. They sort of managed to justify, I think 4 to 8. whereas it should have been 2 to 4. So they're pushing for like just as much time as they can possibly give me. So I'm like, I'm going to jail. Like the prosecutor's pushing hard on this. And it turned out the judge, he was honestly one of the most amazing judges I've ever seen. Like this is not a technical guy.
He was a liberal judge, or he was a...
No, he was a Reagan appointee.
Reagan appointee.
So, yeah,
oh, wow,
like,
really?
Very OG, like deeply conservative.
Yeah. And was he informed? Like, did he understand the world of cyber?
No, that's the thing that really like shocked me is this is not a tech guy. He doesn't have his ear to the ground on cyber. He went and personally researched the ins and outs. And like when he read the sentencing, they do sort of like a preamble before the sentencing where they explain their decisioning. And it was clear he had like gone deep into the inner workings of
Is he
cyber.
Still on the circuit?
I think so.
We should find him. We should go and reach out.
Yeah, I think he refused an interview, but it would be great to get an interview with him because just seeing a judge just go out there and be like, I'm not a technical person. I'm going to go and research like all the relevant facts.
Why do you think he did that?
I think that's what a good judge.
Okay,
like
right.
In an ideal world, every judge would do that, but that is just like a good judge. And so he went out and he researched, and he came back with this like very comprehensive understanding of like all like how it all intertwines. And then he basically came to basically a split conclusion of first, the good I've done outweighs the bad that I've done.
Right.
And second,
which you don't need technical knowledge for.
Yes.
That's a human decision.
Yes. And then the technical decision was like, why are we doing this?
Right.
Like, he is still actively contributing to the security of the United States and the world.
Yeah.
Like, what is gained by putting him in jail when he's already rehabilitated?
Yeah.
Like, what is the point of that? Because the US don't see it that way, but generally the point of prison is to rehabilitate you, is to make you a functioning member of society.
All 4.5 million people who are in.
Yes.
Yeah. So you got a suspended sentence, right? Or
did.
commuted sentence, was that right?
They basically he basically sentenced me to the legal minimum he could give me, which was a 1-year suspension.
And what were you expecting?
I was expecting 4.
Or 4 incarceration?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what a moment for you. What an amazing guy, by the way.
Amazing.
Because, and maybe he was so visionary that he understood that if you are presented as someone who has, I know you hate the redemption path story, but they're kind of like a kid who's like doing bad stuff and now someone who's using their skills to advocate good stuff, and it's as basic as that, then you will inspire others. And look, we hang out quite a lot, and DEF CON is a ridiculous experience being together because it's just a trail of people following you. And they're people who, it was just now, right? Like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And, and people who you don't know, but they know you because they know your story and what you represent. And so that is quite a powerful thing. I mean, you are setting it, and I know you hate this, but you are setting an example for people who are using their skills and they've got an ethical fork in the road to make, and you can make the right decision.
Yeah, you're right. I do hate that. 'Cause it's like, it's leaning too far into like you're a role model. Which I am not a role model. I'm the furthest thing from a role model.
That's what the best ones say.
Yeah, but there is like obviously it's something like an alternate path. It's like, hey, maybe you're doing crime.
Yeah.
Here is what you could be doing instead.
But let me ask you a question. Many people, if I played the story back to someone, someone was doing something that was, you're not kind of stabbing people, you're not shooting people, you're a young kid at the time, you get hooked by the big guys, they put loads of leverage on you, they squeeze you really hard, you lose years of your life, you're finding yourself in incarceration, probably surrounded by people you don't really want to be with, you've lost some of your freedom, you're isolated, I could imagine you would feel bullied, and why? But you're not angry. That's my experience with you. You're not bitter and you're not angry, and in fact, you kind of have made friends with law enforcement. I mean, we met through Will McKean, right? Who was Special Agent Will McKean, a former FBI, now also on the advisory board of the hacking games. But like, you guys are incredibly close. So help me understand what is it that stopped you being angry and bitter against law enforcement for putting you through that experience?
So it was a couple of different things. There was some bitterness, but it was very specific. It was that when they pulled me in, they made it very clear that they were not threatening me with jail because they thought I was a bad person. They were threatening me with jail because they wanted something, which obviously rubbed me the wrong way because that's blackmail. Like, you're not trying to get justice, you're trying to get value out of me by using threats. But that was that specific agent in that specific office in that specific district in that specific state. It's like a very, very small portion of the FBI. And I had friends in the bureau since long before this case. And they had done like amazing work, and they had always advocated for like, let's not just throw everyone in jail. Like if these aren't bad people who aren't like beyond saving, why don't we find a different path? A lot of what the work we're trying to do is trying to advocate for the government to give second chances to these young hackers. And there's a lot of people in the bureau, Will being one of them, and a couple of my friends being very similar, who advocate for this same path. So I always found like kind of a connection with that sort of mindset. And also it felt warranted. Like I didn't like...
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It felt warranted.
Like I didn't like the way they went about it because it didn't feel like it was about justice. But I also felt like I deserved it because like I have committed a very bad crime. I deserve to be prosecuted and imprisoned for this crime. So there was never any like, oh, this is your fault, because like it's not their fault. I was the one who did that.
So what's really interesting there is that you've referenced it a few times in our chat about this self-sense of ethics. Like you know what's right and wrong, and you know you've called it out a couple of times. So can we go back a bit, just understand a bit about you as a kid and your upbringing and what your experiences were? So you were living outside of London, right? Was it Abingdon or somewhere?
So I was living in Bracknell.
Bracknell,
for the first 8 years of my life, and I moved to Devon.
And then you moved to Devon. Now, just for our international audiences, can you please explain Devon?
Devon is very scenic, very beautiful, golden sand beaches, not what you picture in the UK, something you would think of if you thought about like Australia or maybe New Zealand. Absolutely beautiful, but the most remote place on earth.
Not exactly a technology innovation hub throbbing with hackers.
No, my town I think had 11,000 people total. And the town I lived in before that had 100.
Yeah.
So we're thinking like the smallest of small towns, and there's nothing going on. There's no tech industry. There's no nightlife.
Yeah. And you went there at 8 years old, and your parents are in the healthcare world. They're working with the NHS, right?
Correct.
So they got a sense of service and helping people. And tell me about school. Like, was that a hand in a glove fit for you? What was the experience? Leading question.
I already know the answer.
But tell us about the experience there. Like, I mean,
yeah, school. So it just felt very just trying to fit everyone into this like identical box. And from a very early age, I kind of got a feeling for what I wanted to do in my life. And it wasn't go to university and get a degree and go and work an office job and climb the corporate ladder. And my parents were very big on this idea of like, if you don't get good grades and you don't get a good degree, you're just going to fail in life. You're not going to get a good job. And I could start to see this like path materializing. So I was very not big on school. And
what age was this roughly? I mean, just help people.
Very early. I would have said about 14 was when I started like wavering on school, because I was asking myself like, okay, some of these things are important. Like it's important to learn about certain parts of history so that we don't repeat it. But why do I need to know about the ancient Romans, or the ancient Egyptians? Like, what is this going to contribute to my life? Like, why do I need to know algebra? Am I ever going to use any of this? Answer was no. So I just felt like we were being taught just so much useless knowledge. And it wasn't even being taught. Like in a lot of cases, it was just rote memorization.
Sure.
We're not being taught why this is useful, what it's useful for. They're just saying, remember this equation, remember this, remember this.
Were you a pain in the ass?
I was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Okay. I just refused to do the work.
Right. Okay.
I had like my thing I wanted to do. And I was busy trying to learn to code.
Right. So, and how did you discover that? Because it's not in your family's like DNA, right? Like it's not like your parents were coding or computer engineers. So how did you discover it? What was your way into it?
I don't remember how I discovered coding as a whole, but I had like sort of brushes with like back in the MySpace era, you had like customizing your page with HTML.
So you had a computer at home?
Not my own until I was a bit older.
It was like a family computer?
But we had a family computer.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'd had like little brushes with coding. And I remember like one thing where I was like, oh, this is actually fun. Like I enjoy this. It felt like kind of building puzzles.
Were you self-teaching at that point?
Yeah. So I like the logic and the like just the putting the puzzle pieces together to get this final result. It felt like I was a big fan of like building things as a kid. We lived on a farm for a while, and there was like a lot of scrap wood, scrap metal, all kinds of things, and we would just build crazy stuff. We'd build like trebuchets, go-karts.
Who's we?
Me and my younger brother.
Okay, cool.
So I was used to like constructing things, and software just felt the same. It's like I can build anything, on like within a computer, obviously.
Yeah, that's why Minecraft is such an incredible platform.
Yeah, because you can just do anything. So I just gravitated towards software engineering, but my school wanted to push me in like this other direction of doing all these like things. And IT back then was like, we're going to learn how to use Microsoft Word. Have you ever typed words on a computer? We're going to teach you how to do that. And everyone is like, were you born yesterday? Like, no one needs to learn this stuff. Like, it's intuitive. You press the button on the key and the button comes up on the screen. So we spent like 6 months learning how to make PowerPoint presentations and use Microsoft Word, something which every single person in the class already knew how to do intuitively. And it just bothered me. So I was trying to break out of the school systems because they had these software restriction policies that would basically only let you use educational software.
Right. And you were bored, and
I was bored.
More stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted to do different stuff. So I'm basically hacking the network, trying to get other software.
And did you know you were hacking the network? Yeah. But like the concept of hacking, were you aware of that, or were you just experimenting?
No, we were pretty aware of like the concept of hacking.
Who's we?
Like all of the other hackers in school.
Okay, so you weren't on your own in this small town of 11,000 people in...
Surprisingly, there was a lot of hackers
really?
in my school. There's a good, like, I'd say about like 5, 6 of us in
just
my year.
How big? In just your year? And your year would have been, what, 30 kids or something?
Yeah.
So that is super interesting. That's a high proportion. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it was just maybe an anomaly.
Yeah.
But there just was a lot of
found
kids
each other.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So then, what was your pathway into the online hacking community? Like,
so back then there wasn't a lot of like legal learning paths. There weren't all of these like courses, and I think this was probably even pre-Twitter. So there wasn't like the InfoSec Twitter community.
Pre-X, Marcus.
X does not exist. Twitter died a couple of years ago, and there is no other platform.
Virtue died a couple of years ago. Yeah.
But so the only place you could go to learn hacking skills was hacking forums.
Right.
And these weren't forums of like enthusiasts. These there were some enthusiasts there, but it was mostly like criminal hackers. So you're mixing and mingling with these people who are doing organized crime.
Were you conscious of that?
Yeah, like
you were conscious that there were people up to no good.
Yeah, you pretty much immediately see it. There's people like selling like financial theft tools. Right. There's people selling credit card data.
Yeah.
Like it's clear that a lot of the people on the forum are doing crime, and you kind of try and you stick with like the good sides and the enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. But when you're surrounded by like that much crime, it just gets normalized, and at some point you just find yourself drifting.
And when was the moment where you were consciously doing criminal activity? What age and what was your circumstance?
I think it was 15 when I got asked to make the rootkit.
Okay, that was the first one.
Yeah, so they offered me like a pretty signisignificant amount of money.
How much were they paying you?
I mean, in today's money, it sounds hilarious, but it was like $5,000.
Yeah, but for 15-year-old, 15 years ago.
That's like an insane. Like,
yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with that money in the small town in Devon?
So I'm like, I can buy everything I've ever wanted.
I can buy the whole of Woolworths.
So I was like I was never really about the money.
Where were you banking it?
Pass.
Like,
I'm going to invoke the fifth here.
Invoke the fifth. The fifth is invoked. All right. So you were making the money. You felt empowered.
Yeah.
Okay. And you felt and how did they find you? You just bumped into them on the hacking forums.
Yeah.
Did you feel like they targeted you?
No. So I was posting like some of the work I'd done, and they had seen the work, and they were like, "This is really good. We would like you to come work for us." And I saw.
So they were scanning. They were reviewing your disclosures, right? Yeah, okay.
And I basically just got recruited to write code for this organization.
Yeah. Now, you and I have spoken about a moment where you saw your code being used on an individual, and that was your ethical fork in the road. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'd always been super, super uncomfortable with the idea of financial fraud, credit card fraud, like bank fraud, any kinds of like taking money from like good, honest people. And I was obviously railroaded into writing this banking Trojan. I was already unhappy with it, but I had already committed to it. So it's like I'm already in too deep. So I just basically continued maintaining my side of the code, and I left the other side alone. But there was this one moment where one of the clients or the customers who had bought the code was having issues with it. And he's like, I can't get it to work on this website. And he gives me like a login and a password, and I think it's like a test account. So I log into this account, and it's like some old person's bank account.
Wow.
And I can see like their life savings are in here. Like I think it's like 70,000 USD, which in that country is like literally retirement money.
Yeah.
And I realized this person is trying to steal that money. Wow. And the bug in my code is the only thing that is standing between like this person and losing their retirement savings. And that was the point where it ruined me. Like I hit eject, I got out. Wow. I never fixed the bug in the code, and that was it.
You know, I always feel like if you tell a kid, don't walk down the street and punch another kid in the face and steal their money, they get it. Because it takes something to punch someone in the face and see the blood running down and then take the money. It takes a lot for someone to do that. Like a soldier, bayoneting someone. It takes a lot to actually do the physical action. But when you are doing it online and you're dislocated from the end user and you don't see the human or the name or the face and you don't see the anguish and the angst, it's like an extension of a game. Yeah, in a way. It's the same with drone pilots. They talk about delayed PTSD for drone pilots because they do obviously damage, but it's on a screen. Was that moment when you saw the real life bank account and you could visualize someone's life savings? That was, I guess, it became tangible, human.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd actually seen like the actual that part of the malware in use. And like obviously I knew what it was being used for, but you don't see the humanity, right? You just see like bank accounts and you hear about the numbers, and then I'm sitting and I can see this person's name, I can see their bank balance, I can see their spending. Wow. And that's the point where you see like this is a real human on the end of my actions.
And what was the decoupling process? I mean, surely the organization that was paying you was not completely excited that you didn't want to work for them anymore.
No, they were actually they put a lot of pressure on me to keep working with them. So I ended up just writing worse and worse code.
you basically sucked at your job until they fired you.
I literally did just the worst.
Do you know who they were?
No.
Did you get a sense of whether they were an organized group or as an individual? Or
I think it was a small group.
Small group. Okay. And they felt professional? As in like structured and organized, they knew what they were doing, or do they feel like they were cowboys?
It didn't feel like a professional, like structured organization in the modern sense, but sure. In the sense of what you would have got back there, like a small group who have like a business plan and have different like functions within the group. But it's not like these big like corporations you see with like ransomware, where they have like tech support and IT support and like sysadmins and a CTO. But it was a fairly professional organization.
Did you feel threatened?
Oh yeah, no, they directly threatened me, which is why I chose the route of, okay, if I just hit exit, they're going to just try and pull me back in. But if I just do an absolute terrible job, they're just going to want rid of me.
And they were threatening with like doxing you or swatting you, or they were threatening you with physical?
Well, they were threatening to give my address to the FBI.
Oh, right, okay.
So they were threatening to get me arrested by the FBI if I didn't stay on board.
Wow. So the hacking community, I mean, as you know, I have zero credibility with these guys. I'm not technical. I'm not from cyber, and but I've got to know a lot of them, and it's an amazing culture. I mean, it's got its challenges for sure, but my God, that sense of community is really interesting. So when you're a young experimental kid, you are of course exceptional. I would say proudly, you're quite an unconventional mind. The patterns you see and the way you solve problems is extraordinary. As the more we've got to know each other, but when the community comes together of young people in their teens who are experimenting, and they're a bit like free-range chickens, and they're like, there's no one guiding you, right? There's no, like, the parents aren't guiding you, the schools aren't guiding you. In a way, that's the joy of it, and probably the creativity in it. You must have, in that hacking community, come across so many different types of people who are like you, creative and innovative and experimenting, but then some people who clearly had highly bad intentions. What's the code in there? Like, what's the code of ethics? Like, how do people operate with each other?
I think there is a code of ethics. Everyone sort of has their own moral compass. and you'll run into the career criminals, and you'll run into people who they just do it for the challenge. Like you see this a lot in like game cheat development, in like the early stage rootkit development. It's more about the challenge of subverting the computer systems than it is of actually accomplishing any goal. It's like, can I do this? And I see it a lot with cheat developers. They don't care about people cheating in games. They don't care if you're bad at video games and you want to feel like you're good. They do it purely because they want to beat the anti-cheat system. They see it as like a cat and mouse game, like a challenge. And you would see a lot of that on those forums. It was people who, they weren't writing malware to cause harm. They were trying to bypass the antivirus products, try to subvert the operating system, and they were just doing it purely for the challenge. And then you'd kind of get this clash where the people who were doing career crime would try and reel those people in because they were the ones with the real skill.
Yeah.
Because you have like the career programmers, and then you have the passion programmers who are going to turn out so much better because they're doing this out of like the love of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
They're not just seeing it as like a paycheck, and they're going to make a far better product than say someone who's just working for the money.
You know, Jeff Mann, we did a podcast with, and he's so much heart for that guy. And I said to Jeff, wow, you know, you're the founder of the red team at the NSA. You know, wow, you must be so technical. Stupid question. And he looked at me like I was an idiot, but he was very kind about it. And he said, no, it's all about puzzles. You know, he said, when I was a kid, I grew up with wooden puzzles with my dad, just doing lots of wooden puzzles and solving them and working out the patterns and solutioning. And he said, that is the bottom line of what we do as hackers. And when you're talking about the gaming side, you know, we were with John Madeline yesterday talking about the overlay between gamers and hackers, and how this new generation of Gen Z, you know, the overlay is like 100%. Like basically every hacker today seems to be a gamer because it's the same puzzle logic mindset, and they're trying to solve things. And you were talking about the cheat code and the modification approach to it. Are you seeing people developing their cybersecurity skills in their modding of games and their cheat code development? Are you seeing that happening a lot?
So it's almost a one-to-one overlap. I've always actually said people who are looking to get into malware analysis specifically, or any kind of reverse engineering, there's two paths to reverse engineering. Being a malware developer, because you just understand how the malware works, so you understand how to reverse engineer it, or be a cheat developer, because game cheats are essentially malware. They work in the same way that rootkits work. They get inside the operating system kernel, they modify the system to behave in a certain way, and they're trying to bypass the anti-cheat systems, which work the same way as antiviruses do. So it is pretty much a one-to-one skill map between writing game cheats and writing rootkits. So the actual skills you develop doing that, it will take you straight into a cybersecurity career. Like it is a cybersecurity skill in and of itself.
But how do I fit that on my LinkedIn profile? Like, how does that go into my resume? You know, this is the madness about it. And, you know, this is what we're so committed to, which is like the way that people are evaluating this young generation, this amazingly talented generation, is completely disconnected to what the generation are doing.
Yes.
You know, and that's why, you know, with our Haptide product, we're building this image of this picture of the kids based on their modifications and their cheat code developments, and then their performance in CDFs and bug bounties, but not based on doing like government compliance certificates or doing, you know, like training programs from insert big tech corporation here. You know, it's just not relevant, I think, right?
Yeah, so I've always been like, I get so much hate on LinkedIn for this because I'm very anti-certifications, anti-degrees. I think we need people who have actual practical skills in the industry. And a lot of the time we're passing them over for people who have this fancy piece of paper that really all they've done is gone and paid $10,000.
How many fancy bits of paper do you have?
0. I dropped out of high school twice. But then you have all these people who are just being passed over because everyone's focusing so deeply on these certifications, and they do have some value, but then you're missing all this other value, which is the people who actually have the practical skills. Because when you come out of a certification or when you come out of a degree, those things are not teaching you to be an expert. They are teaching you to have the bare minimum amount of skills to start in an entry-level role. Whereas these people who have been like doing cheat development and malware development, those are senior engineers. Those are people who could like go straight halfway up the career ladder in your company.
Wow.
Maybe they need some management skills if they're going to go on a management track, but they already are like 99% of the way there.
That's amazing. I just really want to like underscore that. So in your view, technically, the level of proficiency people have got in their cheat development skills can be put into the professional environment in cyber.
Absolutely, because when you're writing cheats, not only are you developing the code, are you understanding the internals of the operating system, but they're reverse engineering the games.
Right.
So they have the reversing skills, they have the development skills, they have the operating system understanding skills. That is all of being a malware researcher.
Yeah.
So they could literally just hop straight into a malware research career with very little transition time.
And have you seen any traction of organizations or governments or gaming companies or cyber businesses looking at that talent from those forums and environments and identifying them as potential hires?
I actually have seen a couple of companies doing that, and I actually got the opposite one, which was because of the overlap, it was a gaming company wanted me to come and write anti-cheat software.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I pushed back at the time because I didn't see the link.
Yeah.
I was like, why would you want a malware developer writing anti-cheat software?
Yeah.
And then I came to realize it's the same thing.
There's a guy actually in our community called Philip Koskinas from Riot Games who is really strong on exactly that point of getting cyber people into writing the anti-cheat stuff. But I think my observation is, and we were talking about this a couple of days ago in a group, that the executives and the people who are running cyber organizations at government side and the private sector, they're all a bit like me, basically, which is like they're middle-aged white men who are so incredibly disconnected from Gen Z youth culture. That's a bit, I guess, is not like me because we're in it every day. But, if you really go and spend time with 12 to 27-year-old people in the hacking world, what you understand is like the language, the gaming culture, the way they communicate, the way they value progress, what they expect, what the motivations are so different to the world that's operating in the gilets and the kind of, the corporate world. And I think the companies that lean in and understand youth culture will be the companies that will get the very best talent and do the best innovation. And you're just not seeing it at the moment.
Yeah, like you see like it very like sporadically. Surprisingly, like the UK has been historically very good at it.
Yeah.
GCHQ especially are very good at finding that unconventional talent. Because I remember I was recruited multiple times when I was very young. They found me like quite early on.
Did they? What age?
I would have said about like 19,
Wow.
I think. They would put out these challenges. They're almost like CTFs. So they'd put out these like hacking challenges, and you had to go through the challenge just to get to the application page to apply for the job. And the whole point of it was testing their practical skills rather than, say, their interview skills or whether they have a PhD or certifications. And they've historically been very, very good at this, is finding ways to find that unconventional talent. But the rest of the companies, a lot of them are still doing the HR filters, whether we're going to scan your resume for keywords with AI. And then if it doesn't match the keywords, we're going to throw it in the bin.
No, but the problem is the resumes are now written by AI, and now they're being read by AI. So it's just like two ghosts talking to each other. We're all screwed. Tell me what we can do to, your story is, of course, a great one. You're a nice role model. But for every one of Marcus's, there's 99 who haven't gone down the right path. And, we see so many examples of kids who have got different levels of vulnerability, particularly neurodivergent kids who are easily manipulated. And you and I have spoken previously about like Junaid Hussain, for example, who really is a tragic story of someone who was put down the wrong path. What can society do to enable pathways for perhaps neurodivergent hacking kids who have dropped off the grid in their teens? What can we do to harness them and put them in the right direction?
I think we need to build more organizations that give them something to do. Because one of the big problems I notice, especially with the cybersecurity industry, is they only want senior engineers. No one wants to train people.
Right.
So there's this big gap between, okay, I have some skills, and okay, I can actually perform at the level that a company wants. So what most companies will do is they will either hire people from other companies, or they will look for those people who are already like 99% of the way there, which is fine if you're like a cheat developer or you were writing malware, because you've already skipped the junior and the mid-level, the career ladder, and you're already almost at senior level. But then when it comes to the rest of the people, there's this huge gap of like, how do you get into a job? And there needs to be organizations to fill the gap, to either take on people and train them up, The intelligence services actually do a fairly good job of this. So GCHQ specifically is quite a big fan of like taking on people who maybe aren't super skilled just yet, training them up. They do like a few years in the agency, and then they go and make $1 gazillion in the private sector. And I think we need more pathways like that.
Is it the government's job, do you think?
I don't think it's the government's job, because obviously that's not for everyone. Like, not everyone wants to be a spy. Not everyone like is on board with the government's agenda.
Sure.
I think there needs to be a variety. Like, I like the model that GCHQ themselves have done, but I think we need to replicate that in the private sector.
And who should we be looking at? Is it the Googles and the Microsofts and the Apples and the Amazons who should be doing that? Or is it the kind of threat intelligence, more niche cyber companies? What do you think?
I think everyone has to chip in, or there needs to be an organization that sits between all of them and acts as a pipeline.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. yeah.
Almost like a hacking game.
Yeah, exactly. So my observation is that the big tech companies are overloaded on talent. So, I heard a data point the other day that for one engineering role, after the filtering system, this tech company had 700 qualified applicants for one engineering role in cyber. So my sense from them is that they don't need more talent options. Whether they have the right ones or not is a different discussion. Interestingly, the defense sector and the governments are highly motivated. So we get approached most by governments now in 5 different countries, all saying we need to find the very, very best young hacking talent in our country because we're at war and we need to drive national security. I really see them leaning in so hard, whereas the big tech companies, it's not really our biggest issue right now. And then it may be that it's stimulated by the governments.
I mean, there's definitely a path, and it is. There's a lot more motivation there. And as you said, like, it's not a good time in tech. There was a minute where they were hiring anyone they could find.
Yeah.
You could just turn up out of high school with like no programming skills and end up at Google.
Yeah.
But now it's like layoffs after layoffs. The industry, like the ratio of people to jobs is like in the 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a big gap in the government because the salaries aren't as high. Everyone wants to go and work for the Googles and the Microsofts and the Apples.
Yeah.
And the government work doesn't seem that glamorous.
Yeah.
And I think there is an in there where it's like, okay, maybe the salary is a bit lower.
Yeah.
But if everyone's being laid off anyway, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And you're going to gain like a lot of very valuable skills that when you do go into private sector, you're going to get a much higher salary than if you hadn't.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably one of the routes that we really need to be focusing on, is like getting people into like national security roles.
Right.
Which is obviously kind of a tricky one, because if you have a slightly criminal background, that affects like security clearance.
Yeah.
A lot of hackers are into like recreational drugs.
Yeah.
That makes things a bit difficult with security clearances.
Yeah.
But I think there's like a lot of room for like, I want to say improvement, but more modernization.
Evolution,
evolution, because we're kind of thinking in this like 90s mindset of you got to be like the square in the suit to go work in the government.
But I'm seeing that change. General Tom Coppinger-Sims, who's the deputy commander of the CSOC, which is the Ministry of Defense Cyber Division, we had him on the podcast last week, and he really talks about pursuing corkscrew mines. So the unconventional mines, that was what Alan Turing and his gang who came into Bletchley Park and cracked the Enigma code. And I got a sense, and what General Tom was saying is like, look, the UK military has got a history of taking people who were crossed the line in law and said, hey, here's a pathway. You could go to jail, or you could come and get disciplined and join a unit and join the armed forces. And so I think they're quite early adopters on this. And I don't quite know what that looks like yet, but I'm excited to see, because they know they're at war, I mean, it's like being attacked every day, literally every day. And that sharpens them. Help me understand one thing. I can pick up the media and I can read that there are 4.8 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity. Then I'll look at my next AI created LinkedIn post that is telling me that all jobs have been eliminated because of agentic red teaming. What are we facing here? What's the real view of what AI is doing to the industry? What the threats are? I mean, surely it's just going to save us all, isn't it?
Yeah. So AI is not doing anything. I think what is really happening there is when they say we have XYZ number of unfilled jobs, what they're saying is job postings that an applicant has not been hired for that role. But you have two problems with that. You have something, I don't know if this is a thing that's in the UK, but in the US you have a phenomenon which is called ghost job posting,
Yeah.
which is under certain state laws, even if you intend to, say, promote someone internally into a role, you are legally required to advertise that role externally to give external candidates a chance.
We have the same,
Yeah. But of course, the company's already decided who is going to fill that role, and they're forced to post it by the law, but they have no intention of even reading the applications. So you get thousands upon thousands of job postings for jobs that were never available. And then what you have is I call it wish casting jobs, which is for $50,000 a year, I would like someone with 18,000 years experience. They have met the queen, best person in cybersecurity, worked at every intelligence agency.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one even meets this criteria.
Yeah.
Never mind is going to take the job for that salary.
Yeah.
And most of the jobs I see fit into that sort of window of like, the pay does not match.
But what's the issue there? Is that are they real jobs, or is it that HR have got a set of criteria that they need to get through? Like, what's the point?
I think it's there's a lot of I want to say there's a lot of delusion in the industry about like what people are willing to accept and like what skills the average person has.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking like 15 years experience, if you go to Google with 15 years experience, you're making like $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Like no one is taking your like 15K a year job with 15 years experience.
Yeah.
And there's like just a very big disconnect between how much these skills actually cost and how much they're offering. So you have all of these job postings that are just, they're wish casting, that no one is going to take that job. Then you have the ghost job postings, and all of this adds up to this very big number of 800,000 unfilled roles or whatever it is. I think it's millions now, they're saying.
Yeah. Well, globally it's 4.8 million is what the job reporting papers say.
But what's really happening is you have a gap where there is no bridge between I've just got out of high school or college with my degree and my certifications, and most companies just only hiring senior engineers. So you have like a bunch of very capable people stuck on like one side of the bridge and no way to get into those senior roles.
So that's what our experience is. So there's a superb person in our company, and she was picked at 14 by the Cyber First program. So that's a government-sponsored program here in the UK where they look for outstanding young talent. And she won a bursary, and she was sponsored to go to university. She went to Oxford. She got a degree in computer science and philosophy. She's been government picked from 14. She's been trained since she was 14. She's so good, she's been given a bursary. She's gone to arguably one of the top universities in the world, doing an amazing integrated degree. She comes out, she cannot get an interview anywhere in cyber, and she's deeply passionate about cyber. She cannot get an interview anywhere. And actually, I met her socially, and we had a coffee, and I was listening to her, and I was thinking, how is no one hiring? I mean, she is incredible. So she joined the Hacking Games, and now she's a core part of our product team, and she's, she knows this because I told her yesterday. She's an unbelievable potential talent, unbelievable. But why is the industry not seeing her? I mean, it's ridiculous, and that is because, people like her, they don't want to write resumes selling themselves. I can't imagine you writing a resume selling yourself.
No.
She would hate doing an interview.
Yeah.
She would hate it. She's not going to do the buzzword bingo and all that stuff. She's someone who does the work and should be valued on the quality of the work. And give me a difficult problem to solve. Yeah. And I'll go and do that.
And I think the issue is like a lot of the HR systems, they're built around like the traditional industries where like that is a valid way. Is like, hey, we're going to look at, is your CV good? Are your qualifications good? Whereas in cyber, that's just never worked.
Sure.
We've known it for years and years. My first ever job offer was, it was one of the technical leads. He saw my blog post. He was like, that's a really good blog post. Yeah. Come and work for the company. And I was like, but your thing says I need a degree. And he's like, not anymore.
Right, there you go.
Just come work. And there used to be a lot more of that, but it now feels like, I do feel like AI has kind of factored in that everyone has convinced themselves AI is going to replace the interns and the juniors and even some of the mid-level developers. So they're like now doubling down on this. We only need senior developers. And of course, what's actually going to happen is AI isn't going to materialize. It's not going anywhere. And now you have no pipeline to get from intern to senior developers. So in future, now you have no senior developers.
But also, where does that talent, the young Marcuses, if there's no opportunity for them, what are they going to do with their skill sets?
A lot of crime.
A lot of crime. Listen, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. I'm honestly like, we've become friends, so I'm so happy that you're on board because it's really exciting for us, and we're going to do some really cool stuff together. Tell us a little bit about what's next for you. What do you want to do? What does next wave of Marcus look like? And tell us a bit about why the hacking games and what you're excited about doing with us.
So next wave, I think I'm going to start doing a lot more threat intelligence stuff. I've been doing a lot of media lately. I want to get back into like the trenches, doing the technical cyber work. And then on the hacking game side, I'm sort of very passionate about this bridging the gap between the people exiting college and these senior engineering roles. Like there needs to be someone making a system to get these people hired. And that is your proposition, and that fits exactly what I want to see happening. And I want to see these people getting into these roles in these companies to just stop pretending like you're born a senior engineer. There isn't this whole learning process in between.
So we should do this actually. So obviously what we've got now is a whole bunch of beta testers of young hackers who are creating their hapti profile. So we look at their performance across like 100 different games and like Valiant, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Stanley Parable, whatever. So we look at their performance so we can see how like their accomplishments, and then we look at their modifications of the games and their cheat codes they've created in the games. Then we look at their psychographic map to see how they think and puzzle solve. And it builds a full hacking aptitude picture of them that says, hey, to your point earlier, by the way, which is, I was so excited what you were saying earlier about, if someone is creating an aimbot, that's a precursor to doing, memory injection, right? And that's the cyber skills and senior exec cyber skills. So we're going to be able to say to these kids, hey, all this stuff you're doing in the gaming, this is actually a correlation to this in cyber, and this is what the career path looks like. And hey, employer, understand that what a 17-year-old Marcus is doing here is the best accreditation you can have. So I think we should put you through it and see what your profile looks like. I think that's so cool.
That's super useful because it works both ways.
Yeah.
Like, as a young hacker, I didn't even know the job I currently work existed.
Right.
We were told you had to be like a pen tester or a blue team or a red teamer.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really fit in any of those roles. Like I was sort of into malware analysis, but I didn't want to be like an antivirus researcher.
Yeah.
And I ended up in cyber threat intelligence, an entire industry I did not know existed.
Right. Isn't that crazy? It's like, when I was a kid and I grew up, like I knew what a professional footballer looked like, I knew what, actors look like. Now we've just got to put this world at that pedestal because it's that important. That's
Absolutely.
how I feel. Mate, thank you so much. So happy to have you on board. I hope you've had a great trip over here, and I really look forward to seeing you stateside as well.
Thank you so much.